What's going on, everybody? You are tuned in to another episode of the Talk About It podcast. I'm Lauren Fulmer.
I'm Victor Dantas.
And we appreciate your support. We have a very special guest. It's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to get to pick the brain of David Garrison. David, how are you doing?
Great. I feel really good.
Good.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have Garrison Art Studios in Burlington, Iowa. Very well traveled with over 40 plus years in the art industry. Very much have made a name for yourself, not just here locally, but even throughout the world. So we're going to dive into a lot of that today. But why don't you go ahead and start, just tell us and our listeners about David Garrison. Who are you? What do you got?
Okay, I have worked in the arts forever, all my life. That's all I've been interested in. By the time I got to high school, the art teacher said, well, you could make a living with this. I said, well, I could make money. I wasn't going to do it for free.
Sure.
And so she helped me search out things I could do in the way of finding to get professional, such as an art school. And I looked into different ones, like in New York and so forth, and California. Discovered, I feel, the best one was in Chicago, the American Academy of Art. And this is an incredible art school. It has masters teaching. The one was from Copenhagen. Everybody called him Mr. Van. And Van den Broek was his name. He was excellent, and he taught oil painting and how to do the figures and so forth. And I majored in portraits and figures. Wow. And but the first year had to do fundamentals. They had people. It was a very well-known school, and other students came from other colleges, wanted to start right in with oil painting and so on, but no, they had to start in with their basic development, and that's what made their name, because they were very good, very meticulous in how they taught and what they expected out of their students. And I had never been to an art school anyway, so I was happy to learn all these foundations, fundamentals. And from there, I just developed into what I discovered I really had interest in, and that's the portraits and the figure drawing and so forth. And that was the essence of what I was trying to do in my future. And I used it to create the murals I have, and then I do portrait studies for these murals or for commissions. I've had people and families be able to hire me to do their whole family in a portrait system, like almost in a mural size. Like it could be up to 40 inches long and by 30 inches high. That's fairly good size and just to be framed. And then to do one on walls, I've done that as well. And this Van den Broek taught us how to do sizing and priming of our own canvases. He brought in raw linen, and then he taught us how to cook the hide glue. You've heard of horses saying they need to go to the glue factory. That's the truth, because from there we use it in the sizing of these canvases. And then from that point, we prime it with a special priming system, and it is so tight, so strong, so perfect that it will last for hundreds of years. And then, of course, we frame it after it's all, the finished artwork is all done. And that's how we took off, by being taught carefully for 4 years how to conduct ourselves, and to also really promote ourselves too, because they would say, you once create this painting, you have a product, and now you have to promote it, you have to sell it, and otherwise it's just an amateur hobby. And I never wanted that, because this was going to be my life. And so from there, if I was still living in Chicago, I lived there for 9 years and met my wife there, and we had our sons there. But I rented my paintings out to like country clubs, so much a month, and I would change, or they would sell, and I would change it every month, and that's how we started to grow. And then I created, since I did portraits, I did a quality portrait of Abraham Lincoln. It had an aged quality look. It looked like I did it when he was still alive, but I kept telling everybody, "Oh, no, I'm not that old." But they say, "I don't know, you got to look like it." Anyway, it won wonderful awards, and that's what really got my name started. And I still have this portrait, and it's in a gallery in Nauvoo, Illinois. And it's in a gallery there. They display it beautifully, and it has a very high price of $40,000. And some lawyer is going to discover this, and they can't hold back, and they'll take it.
Yeah.
And as a long-lasting product, I use this Conti crayon. I discovered when I was finishing art school, I could take this product that was made in France, and it's called Conti crayon. It's like a chalk or a pastel, only it can take water. Regular pastel, you cannot use water with it. It'll melt it, and it's non-usable. But this Conti crayon, it can be used with water, and I do it. And that's how I created this Abraham Lincoln. And it's not in one of my brochures, but I'm kind of holding that off to have a lawyer come through the gallery, because a lot of people go through that Nauvoo city, and they see this gallery and they see Abraham Lincoln. They just are drawn to it. They really love it.
And how old were you when you did that piece?
I was 27 years old.
Okay. And so after college, you get done with college, that's how you start getting some sort of money coming in through the country clubs, getting maybe some requests.
Yes.
And then at what point did you, did it dawn on you, like, hey, I got a good thing going here? Was it pretty quickly, or did you feel like, was there, a 5-year hump of struggle, or what was that like?
Oh, it was some hit and miss struggles. I really did. But then there was a company in Chicago that's called Goes Lithograph, and they discovered this Abraham Lincoln. They took pictures of it, and they used it as a reproduction. And then they discovered I could do these portraits in pastels. I did a charming little girl, like 3 years old, and with her hair all done up in a bow, and she was eating an apple. It's just total beauty and just innocence. And they wanted a matching one looking at her as a boy. So I painted him in blue. She was in pink, so he was a blue boy. And it sold well, and total reproduction. And that's what really gave me a great start, is Goes Lithograph. And from there, I just kept expanding and growing, and I had calls, people asking me to do their portraits, and I would do it. Sometimes I would travel, and that's what got me into this idea that I could take this beyond just Chicago. And then I moved the family back to Burlington, where I'm originally from, and I used that as a hub. And I traveled to Arizona to do my artwork and to show it off there in galleries. And in the South and Florida was an excellent place. And then I discovered New York when I joined the Pastel Society of America. And they asked me to teach because I was so good with the portraits and so forth. Not everybody can capture this essence of what brings a personality in art form. You can have a photograph, but it's kind of cold. Some of them looks good and it's inspiring, But in the general form, I think it takes a piece of artwork to really capture the soul, the personality of a person. And I can do that with soft edges or hard edges, the softness of the eyes, or a shadow that's a little bit cold on one side, to capture the look of someone, and their portrait is really inspiring.
David, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask. So, let's say the first art that you ever sold. How did you come up with the price, with the cost of it? How did you, like, think, oh, this costs this much, and I'll try to sell this?
Yes.
How did that work?
I tried just guessing, and that was not the best. So I went back to my art teachers, and one of my famous ones, I studied the last year with him full day, all day, for a year. And his name is Bill Parks, and if anybody recognizes that name, well, they will understand who I'm talking about. He became very famous at the American Academy of Art. So we went out to lunch after I had left art school, and we talked for quite a while, and I asked him, how do I price this? Because we really hadn't covered that part in the art school too much. And he said, well, Dave, consider it per inch. The famous ones, and anyone that's listening ever heard of the name of Richard Schmidt? He is very famous. His average price is $75,000. Wow. And when I was in New York one time, I visited his one-man show. This was many, many years ago. He's passed away now. But his work was all over this gallery. Every single one sold. Two of his paintings was half the size of this table. It was $150,000. Both of them sold. I asked Bill Parks, how could he do this? He said, it's with publicity. It's how you promote yourself. And then you get your price by square inch. And this man, Richard Schmidt, had his price per square inch by far higher than mine. That's how he came up with $75,000 instead of $750.
Right.
And plus he had a way of promoting himself. He put on a video of himself painting, and he had it in a unique system of where he had called it a secret squint. That's what you have to kind of squeeze your eyes together, and that blurs out any sharp form, and you just capture the certain lightness of his chest, certain lightness of one side of your face, and that would block out other parts that was not necessary. He knew how to do this to perfection, and then he knew how to promote that to the public. And the congressman, everyone wanted him to paint their portraits at a really good price, of course.
So, David, what I was going to ask, I've always been under the belief when it comes to art, you either got it or you don't. Now, you've been around some of very high-level artists who have taught you, between teachers, schools, and you've rattled off some of these names already. Do you believe that you had, like, obviously you had some artistic talent that even, like, had you interested in art? But hearing you share this stuff and knowing that there's people out here that are able to teach, and you teach, right? Like,
yes.
You'll even take people under your wing for a price, but and we'll teach and share your knowledge. But do you believe, like, does one really have to have the foundation of it? I'll tell you, I do not. So I'd be curious, like, if you would be able to take me under your wing for a year, I bet you I still can't do one piece of art that would be worth $1, let alone a few hundred or thousand.
Okay.
Like, do you need a natural talent?
Yeah,
to be
it's
good?
important. Yeah, like when I was in kindergarten, they brought out this colorful, gooey stuff, and they said, now we're going to do art. I had no clue what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But when we were into it, I remember thinking, this thing called school is great.
Yeah.
Then they said, we're going to put it away and do arithmetic. I said, good, if that's great, I'm all for it. But it somehow just wasn't the same. So yeah, you have to have something inside you to really call for that ability to create. But all it takes is about 10%. And the rest, 90%, is interest and enthusiasm and your drive. If you don't have that, then, just keep it as a hobby, just enjoy it. But if you want to go after it in a special way to make a living, and you can, then go after it with direction, with that drive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go ahead and share? So you do murals as well, and you're sharing with us in your program here the mural that was uncovered that you did roughly 40 years ago.
Yes.
Why don't you share that story and kind of how someone reached out to you? Why don't you start with how you did it, and then how the years later someone reaches out?
Okay, when economy was kind of going down, I thought, boy, I'm going to have trouble if I don't, sell more. And a family to take care of, and bills to pay. And artists have those, even though people say, artists, boy, you're special. Yes, we are special because we have this talent. But it takes more than just talent to make a living and pay the bills. Because if they don't get those bills, you don't go far.
No, not at all.
Walt Disney, bankrupt 3 times. He had the talent, they had the drive, but he still had problems. Yeah. And so you have to work at it. And so to be able to really go after this, you have to really keep after it. Yeah. And so what was...
You're starting to get to where you, I assume, had to advance what you're offering and your product. So that's how you got to the mural.
Okay. Yes.
And then the one that ended up getting covered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I was in school and thought I would be able to make a living that way, and then someone asked me to come out to their house and go to the basement where they had this big game room, and there was one big wall with a window at the top, and they asked me, can you cover that with a cowboy scene? I said, well, sure I could. Well, I had no idea if I could or not, but I wasn't going to admit it because I needed some bucks too. So, and I've been out west, I know how the cowboys and Indians atmosphere looked. So I gave them a rough draft of what I could do, and they're 27-foot long mural up to the ceiling, which is about 8 foot. And they said, "Doy, go for it." Well, I had to cover that with a gesso, and it had a good surface, but I needed a better surface with this material called gesso. And I could describe that in some areas of my work. Anyway, once that is dry, then I take this Conti crayon, which is made in France, and it's earth tones, and it's not like pastel because I can use water with it. I would draw with that, get that atmosphere of the cowboy and the dust from the horses and so forth, and then I would smear it with water and a paper towel. Anyway, it took about a month to create this whole entire 27-foot mural. And they loved it. They lived with it for years, and that was about 40 years ago. I'd forgot all about it. That took me off onto the murals. I didn't do any more of the Conti crayon. I went into acrylic paint, and I've had people film me as doing their murals on the acrylic paint or in oil. I did that on canvas. I rolled them up and then set it off to like New York, where Marriott would unroll it, and then he would glue it to the wall, to the foundation. And I did that for Holiday Inn, many of the big chain murals. And the one I did in upper state New York, Mr. Marriott took a look at that and congratulated me on their opening of their brand new motel and said that is really stunning. And for Marriott to Willard Marriott is his name. It's a foundation. He founded it. He said that's a beautiful thing. And so that was pretty big pat to the back, almost as good as the money. It was pretty nice.
Yeah. Right. So you did that one, and then you'd forgotten about it.
I'd forgotten all about it. And all these other 31 murals came along and went. And then somebody sent me a little video of them taking apart a wall. They had found this, and when they bought this house, moved in, they could tell this wall was just temporary. It was kind of covering something up. And they couldn't really see what's behind it. It was really pushed against it. So they started tearing things apart, and there was a mural behind there, drawings with color. And so they took all off, and then they found a name, and they had no idea about me. And they looked up, they Googled my name. This was about 8 months ago. And they sent me this little video, and I couldn't believe that was in perfect condition after all this time.
Yeah, that's absolutely, I love that story. You were sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how cool, Victor and I like to buy homes, and we may flip them and do some work on them. I can't imagine, like tearing down a wall and finding something as beautiful as that. And it held up, over years. It looks phenomenal.
So guys, he brought a flyer. I don't know if you can see from the camera, but this is the mural he's talking about here. And then we can add it later with the zoom. But it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
It's a very big one.
And you can go to www.david-garrison.com. You should be able to take you right to the website, see a lot more information on David here. But yeah, that's just amazing.
David, go ahead.
This material called Conticran, I use it a lot in the galleries in the West because they like this Wild West look. And when I did many of them, but one person Googled me and asked me, he said, "Is this yours?" She sent me a picture of it. I found this painting in a used clothing store. It was just hanging on a wall for a price tag of $5. And I bought it mainly for the frame, but this picture was interesting.
Yeah.
And asked, "Is that really worth anything?" And I zoomed in on it and said, "Well, that's in perfect shape. Yes, that's worth about $800 now." And she was stunned. That was just amazing to her.
That is crazy.
Best $5 she ever spent.
Yeah, that's what she thought.
Right. Well, let's talk about traveling a little bit. I know art has not only helped you, pay the bills and provide for your family, but it's also opened up some windows for you to be able to travel all across the world, right?
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk. I know you spent a little bit of time in Europe, right? Why don't you elaborate on some of that and what you're able to enjoy from that?
Okay. Well, I decided my things I've been doing here in America kind of took a nosedive. So you have to do some things to kind of energize yourself. So, and I'm a great follower of Monet. I love his style, very impressionistic. Ones of his haystacks, it's very impressionistic. He lived in France. I figured, well, if it's good enough to be in France for him, I should be able to do something over there too. And I was lacking something that I felt like I could still advance in some way. I'm not satisfied with what I'm doing at the present time. So at that time, I was really not pleased with what was happening in my oil paintings and so forth. So I was accepted in a Pastel Society of France, and my artwork was going to be the centerpiece, a guest of honor kind of thing. And so I thought, instead of sending the paintings, I'll just go with them. And so I went over, and for a week we were entertained in different areas around, showed France. I'd never been there before, and it was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed this experience of how France looked, and got to visit Monet's garden and his lily pads pond, and all the things I had just read about, saw pictures with. I saw it in person, and they even give us time there to spend, to paint, and that was so inspiring. Hey, I decided I could move there. And so I spent 3 years in that area. I have 3 sons, 2 of them living in Burlington. I turned the house where I have over to them, and they took care of it and paid the bills, which is the best part. And I enjoyed France for 3 years. And the French people have a little attitude, and unless you kind of get to know them or kind of get into their groove of life. So I decided, well, if you can't fight them, join them. So I married one of them. And that was pretty good.
So that's where you met your wife?
Yeah, right. The second wife was where in France. And I had only been there a year, so I really didn't understand the language. And the minister that was speaking only in French. So I didn't understand a word that was being said in the whole ceremony. And when it came time for me to say my part, there was a long silence. Everybody was looking at me. And my future wife there just nudged me with her elbow and said, oui. So I was then married, I guess. And she kept saying, yes, we're married. Yes, of course we're married. You couldn't prove it by me because I didn't understand a word of it.
Yeah.
But she was also an artist, and I taught her how to do the murals, how to stretch this canvas, how to size and prime. We went to, in Paris, to Sennelier art store, which was ancient. It was there yet when Monet was alive and well and went there to buy his supplies. I explained I had this commission, which I had a commission from Pennsylvania and USA to do a mural. And I was still living in France, but it had to be done. It was a 6-foot square mural of the Science Building and the Air Museum. And so we went to the Sennelier art store, explained I wanted this hide glue. They didn't understand exactly what I was talking about. They brought in one of the owners who could speak English, and I explained to him what I needed in this hide glue and why it had to be hide glue, because it was the way it had to be cooked. It had to go sink into the fibers of the canvas and be able to penetrate and really soak in and seal this fiber. He said, well, let me look in the basement. And he brought out this bag. He said, this has been there probably since Monet. It even has it in the price in francs, not in the euros. And so I'll sell it to you for that price, which is just about 3 euros nowadays. And it was a really good deal. It was a nice sized bag. And he said, but these other ways of doing it, said, no, I'm happy with this sizing and priming like I have always done it. And so we went back to what's called the Jeets. That's our rental place in Normandy. And I had to cook this hide glue. And if you've ever cooked hide glue, it can drive you out of the room. In fact, it drove my wife out of the house. It really was stunk. I kind of got used to it over the years. But she couldn't believe how bad that smelled. We're going to put that on canvas? So I showed her how, and this is how we sized this whole 6-foot square canvas that we'd stretched out. And she couldn't believe the quality. And then we primed it with this gesso that we bought in the Sennelier store. And it was too large for the rooms we had. And so I painted this mural out in the garage on this property, and cleared out many things there, and found a buggy, And I pulled that out so I could have room. And that's another story, I'll get into that. But I painted this mural in the doorway of this garage. And the wind would blow and the canvas would shake. And I have to hold on to it while I painted. But it was a beautiful mural, and it's probably in this mural, this catalog here. Here it is. That's it.
That's cool,
That's
man.
the one I painted in France. And it went into Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And I was worried because how do you take that on a plane? So I had to roll it up, had to box it up. It couldn't be a 6-foot box. They'd look at that. So I folded it over to be 3 foot and around, it was rolled up. And still, I came through customs. They looked at this box and said, "What on earth is?" And I had to take it apart, and I had to stretch it out. I was connecting flight to go back to Burlington. I had to miss that because I had to explain that wasn't from the Louvre, stolen. I had to prove that it was my painting, and they wondered at the price, and I proved that I had to pay customs on this. But it was worth it because I got a pretty good price for that. Not quite as price as Richard Schmidt, but it was pretty good.
David, you mentioned that it's very important to market yourself, to the publicity. We know that nowadays we have internet that helps with marketing. But back then, what did you guys used to do to market yourself and to do it well so people would know your work?
Well, back then it was on slides. Everybody used slides, and I used the slides to promote and to send to the exhibits and so forth. But also I was interviewed by the radio, and then up in the Quad Cities they had the TV. I was interviewed by that and got a name that way, and then I traveled quite a bit.
Okay.
And I would go all the way to Texas with my artwork, and it was a lot of legwork. It's much easier now with the technology we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think of Bob Ross? Obviously he's an artist that everybody knows of.
Yeah, Happy Brush.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was his theme. Yeah, you have to find a niche.
He sure did, didn't he?
Yeah, he had to find a niche.
Yeah.
And his family is now benefiting from some of that. He's gone.
Yeah.
Wait, who is that? I don't know him.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm the only one
No.
that doesn't know him.
The fuzzy hair.
Victor grew up in Brazil, and
I'm from Brazil.
So he wasn't a lot of the stuff from like our childhood or that I would remember is unfamiliar to him. But Bob Ross, he had a big afro.
Yes.
He would sit and paint on TV. He'd start with a blank canvas and just start painting, and mostly nature, right? I mean, he always did like some mountains and some trees, and he would say little funny stuff like, "I'm just gonna paint a happy bird over here," you know. And
Sure, everything was happy.
yeah, he's very positive, very happy. He's trying to help people learn. So like a lot of people at home theoretically could have their setup.
Yeah.
And be trying to follow strokes and learn that way. But, I mean, to me, at least here in America, from maybe, the year 1980 to like 2000-ish, I mean, Bob Ross was the dude.
Yeah,
right?
sure was. Yeah, he went hard and strong.
Yeah.
He sure
and
did.
even now you can go to art stores and they'll say like Bob Ross paint, Bob Ross brushes.
Yeah.
He has his own product line. I don't know if they're worth a crap for a professional artist. But yeah, that's Bob Ross.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've never used his products.
Well, yeah, you're getting yours from France and all these,
Yeah.
all these other fancy places.
Yeah. The Conti crayon that I have used quite a bit was originally made in Italy, and it was used by the famous artists like Michelangelo. It was called a red chalk, and somebody saw the potential of this material. In France, this man by the name of Conti took this material and created a uniform size, easy to use, easy to buy, and it turned out to be Conti crayon. And it's just as a drawing, sketching material. I took it thinking, hey, this could be something better. And by using it on boards. I cover the boards with a gesso, it's like a plaster, but I rough it up intentionally. And that's how I came up with this portrait system, that's how this one is done, all in the Conti crayon. It has a personality all of its own. It really stands out. And the Abraham Lincoln I created, won award after award. The other artists would see me packing this Abraham Lincoln in and said, well, there automatically is going to be first place, and it was.
But you still own the Abraham Lincoln one, right? It's just in a gallery, but you own it.
Right.
And until someone offers up, what did you say, 40,000?
40,000, and the gallery gets half. All the galleries take half.
They do take half. I knew it was a percentage. I didn't realize it was half.
Yes, it's half.
Wow.
Yeah. That's.
But that's where you're going to get the exposure, right?
Yeah, they advertise. They advertise.
Yeah. So, David, what would you say to somebody who, 15 years old, 20 years old, very young, they can tell, this is my passion, art, painting, but I'm sure too, how this world is, and parents and friends, you can't make a living doing art, and so maybe people are shooting down their goals. But what would you say to somebody young who really does, they feel it, and they want to try to take this to the next level?
Just work hard and try to find your niche. Mine was the Conti crayon. It just took me off into the area I wanted to make a living with it. Just find something very unique. That technology, the computer art, it's great, but try to use it in a different way, in some way, either, in some unusual fashion. That's what it takes, is a little twist that's different. We have Pablo Picasso from many years ago. He went through 4 different transitions. And he did all realism in the very beginning. And then he changed into something else. And then Cubism came along by him, and that was his way of promoting himself. And he did an excellent job with it. And he just became famous, so famous once, that he would take his friends out to a restaurant, and he said one time to the owners of the restaurant, I forgot my money. I don't have it. It's all at home. And it said, well, you are Pablo Picasso, so if you just sign this napkin, I'll take care of the lunch.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he did.
Yeah.
And from that point on, he just started signing napkins.
Maybe Victor and I will get so popular we can get free lunches in our future by just signing napkins. So
that would be
we'll
good.
See.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So how about your children? Any of them follow in the art steps or have any interest there?
Yeah, my oldest son, David. I have 3 sons. David could have easily, and I would have taught him. In fact, that would be part of our playtime. I taught him how to do this sketching, and he got into watercolor. He was really good at it. But his passion was not that. His passion was how he always played to be cops and robbers. He decided he wanted to be an FBI special agent, and that's what he's done.
Well, good for him.
That's nice. Yeah. That's nice.
The last 20 years, they only have 20 years. Sure. He's been that about 12 years now.
Good.
And he's caught some pretty big, he's actually right now undercover. And he catches some pretty bad guys, and that's been his passion. But he has that one watercolor up on his wall framed, and said, someday he'll be retiring, and that's what I'm going to be doing, Dad.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Would you say that he learned from you everything, or he had already that natural talent?
No, he had it built inside.
Yes, okay.
If you have that spark, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you teach people that are not from family? Have you ever had someone coming to you and say, "Hey, teach me art"?
Well, he does that. I looked on your website, right? You offer
Yeah.
Okay.
So people can pay or sign up for some sort of lessons. Why speak on that? Why don't you go down that avenue?
Okay. Well, I felt like I had to learn myself first for quite a while, and then somebody asked. They saw my work, said, "I would love to do that. Can you help me?" So well, I'd give them little hints. And they would do it, and they said, that was so inspiring. So that gave me a hint that maybe I could, if I inspire somebody like that. So now, after a while, I'd organized a system for progressive development. I call it a mini art school, where I just show them the basics, no color, just show them how to get the values, and that's number one. The values are more important than the color. You can have the values right if the color is not quite right, but if the value of that color is okay, then it works. And I showed them the difference, and they could understand that as I show it to them. So I always do a demonstration with each of the classes, pointing out what I'm trying to teach them for that day. And that's what makes them move along. Otherwise, they're just kind of floundering along and not able to know. You need a little bit of a system. And that's why the art school insisted on even the people coming from another college, you have to start with our fundamentals. Otherwise, you'll be just kind of floundering along and you'll be out of joint, out of not in coordinates with what the teacher at that time is trying to teach you.
Well, in the college itself, they don't want, at the end of the day, if you're going to walk away from this institute, you're putting our name on your info. We're going to make sure that you have our fundamentals. You don't want someone else's baggage coming in here and then you got the tail end of it. We want you to have our full, A to Z. So I can understand why if you're a prestigious institute and you're going to want it done your way, and I think that's great that they did that.
Yeah, they insisted. Some didn't stay. They said, I already spent 3 years at this such and such place. Said, well, we can't help that. Yeah. This is our way of helping you to be the best.
Right.
The Santa Claus with the Coca-Cola, man, it's become worldwide. Look, that was a man that was at the American Academy of Art. He did this. And
the whole Santa Coke thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's nice.
And so they've turned out one after another of the famous. So all the really big names have generally come from this American Academy of Art, and also from Bill Parks. You can even Google Bill Parks, and there's a whole big fan club of his. And they'll tell what was the fun thing that he always taught you. What he taught me is the subtleties is as important as the rest of the whole painting. In other words, you can paint the whole painting, but if you put a little extra color in over here or over there to make the viewer look at that a little longer than they would have normally, so it isn't boring, for one, then you have a viewer that's really captivated. And that's how he taught me. Because I was putting out these figures that was okay, but he said, you're missing something. And then he explained the subtleties. And then he would show me what he meant, and how to do that little subtlety in the arm, or how to make it move, or the gleam of the person's eyes in the portrait. And just a little subtlety of how it's maybe the tears coming out of the eye. He'd show me how how that would enhance that painting that much more. That's how he taught me, and he was really good at it.
David, are you still active, like working right now? Did you keep painting and you just won't stop?
Yeah, I never will retire. Never.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Well, that's the old, hey, do what you do, or, do what you love, and you won't be working a day in your life theoretically, right? I mean, you've heard that 100 times. So good for you on being able to do that for yourself. Who would you give? I'm curious. I'm sure you've had many people, especially the younger portion of your life, say you're wasting your time, David. You're never gonna make this.
I've had that.
Right?
That's right. I've right after art school, to get some quick money to be able to keep on paying for the food and paying the bills and so forth, I went to in Chicago, down by close to Michigan Avenue. It was a company that was commercial art, and I signed up, and they took me, and they gave me a little cubicle to work in and showed me what I was supposed to be doing with these phone books, little drawings in these phone books, and it wasn't inspiring for me at all. And so I went to the boss and explained this was not really going to work. I'd worked there about 3 months. And I said, well, what are you going to be doing? I said, well, I was taught to do this fine art, it's called. It's where I do the figures and the portraits and so forth. You can't make it in that world. And I wrote him about a year later, showing my paychecks I made from the commissions, and said, well, is there room for me? So keep drawing your little drawings for the phone books.
Yeah, you keep those phone books.
Yeah,
buddy.
that's what I told him.
Good for you. Yeah, I love that.
It's very nice, man.
Yeah.
But you have to have a lot of spirit and determination.
Absolutely.
For
And
sure.
one thing I was thinking too, as you were talking earlier, it's got to be important to also who you surround yourself with, your network, who you're reaching out to, who you're kind of taking along for the ride, if you will, or picking up pieces from along your ride.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Sure is. Yeah, the galleries that are promoting quality work, but your style would be really good. I've been all over the country, looking for the galleries. Some of them do. This pandemic we went through was a difficult spot. That wasn't fun at all. But the Burlington Arts Center is a very good place, and there's a group of artists there. It's kind of like a club. They kind of help each other. When it's a bad spot, they kind of join in. And also, I'm a member of several different groups in New York. One of them is the American Artists Professional League. And there's a Salmagundi Club. It's the oldest art club in the whole United States. It was begun there way back in 1800 and something. And I was having a really tough time. And they got a hold of me because they had heard, I'd written a couple of my friends in New York explaining, I was having a real struggle. This is way back. So they said, we have funds for helping. And so they set me up with a funds for 6 months of a monthly payment so I could get through my payments of different bills. And so they kind of look after each other. And that's kind of a cool system. But you have to kind of connect with people. If doing it on your own, you can, but it becomes a hobby if you can't really produce and sell.
Yeah, you can't really do big things by yourself. I would say that in any industries like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, you need a team. You need people helping you, mentors, people to tutor you. So
Yes, that's right.
for sure.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're only as strong as your team.
Yes.
And that's
Like-
in life or whatever.
Clear Profits is pretty good people.
They
you.
are, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were asking him if he's still active. He's doing work with us. He's using our business.
Well, you
yes.
should share with me.
Yes,
I don't know.
We're building his new page, and we will help him with Instagram
Great.
ads and Facebook ads.
Great.
Yes.
Well, then you're in good hands. I can promise that.
Yeah, I love it. When Elizabeth suggested this, sounds like a great idea.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, David, I
Awesome.
appreciate you coming in and jumping on this Talk About It podcast with myself and
Yeah.
Victor. And man, I really encourage, or I appreciate you sharing your story, and I encourage hopefully some others listening are inspired by what you're doing. And since you're not retiring anytime soon, keep up all the hard work.
Yeah. I'll never retire. I'll go down with brushes.
Yeah. You guys, it's David Garrison, and you can check out Garrison Art Studios. It's at 831 South Garfield Avenue in Burlington, Iowa. You can check out David-Garrison.com for his website. And you can also hit subscribe on this Talk About It podcast. It'll greatly benefit us. But we appreciate you tuning in to another episode. Hopefully you enjoyed David's conversation. And thanks for putting up with Victor and I for another episode. But
see you guys next week. Make sure you hit the bell so you know when the next video will come up. And David, thank you very much for coming.
I got to throw this out there. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, hey, you guys say hit subscribe at the end, but how much does that cost me? I'm dead serious. It doesn't cost you anything.
It's free.
It's free. Just hitting subscribe just lets you know when our next one's coming out. So don't be afraid to hit subscribe. It's not going to cost you any money. We're not going to ask for any debit card information. But yes, I just wanted to throw that out before we hang it up here.
Yes.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you on our next episode of the Talk About It podcast.
See you guys.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Talk About It podcast.
I'm Victor Dantas.
I'm Lauren Fulmer.
And we would encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit the bell. It's going to be right below the video. So
hit the bell.
So you know when the next episode is up.
We appreciate all the support.
Thank you.